The Incredible Hulk returns, 1988. More than 3 decades ago, we saw the very first glimpse of Marvel's superhero Thor on the screens. And it happened when the second iteration of The Incredible Hulk was released back in 1988. Famed actor Eric Allen reprised the role. Despite the first Hulk movie being a hit, the second one failed to wow the masses and wasn't as successful. Due to this, even though this TV movie was supposed to serve as a pilot for a proposed Thor TV series, similar to a Hulk one, it never went into production, since nobody was willing to take a leap of faith in a flopped character. How unfortunate. Thor, 2011. We had to wait for another 23 years before we saw the God of Thunder on the big screens again. Thor got its very own franchise in Marvel's third phase, but the initial reception to the movie was lukewarm, despite actor Chris Hemsworth doing an amazing job breathing new life into the character. Chris and his brother Liam Hemsworth were the last contenders for the part of Thor. Chris found it amusing, but he expressed no animosity toward Liam, admitting that he was rooting for him to earn the part. Acclaimed director Kenneth Branagh ended up choosing Chris in the end, and we are not complaining one bit. The Avengers, 2012. Before we could witness another standalone Thor movie, we saw him feature in the iconic Marvel crossover movie The Avengers. The movie took the world by storm and was beloved by fans and critics alike, a major reason being Thor's charismatic performance in the film. You'll be shocked to hear that to maintain the physique he built up for the first Thor movie, Chris Hemsworth had to increase his food consumption by a lot, which included chicken breasts, salmon, steak, and eggs every day. Hemsworth stated that he had to ingest the equivalent of his body weight in protein grams, and we can clearly see where all that food went. Truly the body of an Asgardian god. Thor: The Dark World, 2013. Just 2 years after the release of the first Thor film, Marvel decided to follow this up with a sequel, this time under the leadership of a new director. Things didn't quite go to plan since director Alan Taylor found it hard to carry on the flow and continuity from the first film into his own version. Even though the movie is widely considered by many as the weakest of the Thor franchise, interestingly enough, because of the height difference between the two, a box and eventually a ramp had to be employed in parts of Natalie Portman and Chris Hemsworth close-up and kissing moments. Now isn't that hilarious?
Hello? I accept your surrender. Anyone else?
Avengers: Age of Ultron, 2015. Despite the second Thor movie setting the franchise back a little, fans could not get enough of the character himself, and this was apparent in the next Avengers movie. The movie could not live up to the hype of its predecessor and failed to bring the same kind of commercial and critical success, but Thor continued to impress throughout. Not known by many people, it wasn't just the fans who were in awe of Thor, but the writer of the movie as well. Chris Hemsworth was Aaron Taylor Johnson's favorite superhero from the Avengers after making quite an impression on him from the previous movies. That's what we call a true superhero. Thor: Ragnarok, 2017. 2017 saw renowned director Taika Waititi taking over the helms of the Thor franchise, and he took it in a completely different direction, preferring to give it a light-hearted touch and bright color palettes. The result was a movie that turned out to be highly entertaining and was loved by fans throughout the world, becoming an instant commercial and critical hit, despite a few inconsistencies in the plot and character development. Let us tell you something mind-blowing from the movie. Thor's, quote, friend from work line about the Incredible Hulk was suggested to Chris Hemsworth by a Make-A-Wish child who visited the set on the day the scene was filmed. Avengers: Infinity War, 2018. The end of Phase 3 saw Marvel release its finale in the form of a two-part blockbuster, the first of which was Avengers: Infinity War. At this point, we all know about the massive budget and huge commercial and critical success of the movie. But did you know that during the third act of the movie, Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth ad-libbed the dialogue between Captain America and Thor in which they compared their facial hair, reasoning that they have known each other long enough to have that kind of friendly banter. Damn. Don't we all wish we had friendships like that? Avengers: Endgame, 2019. The final movie of Marvel's third chapter was released towards the end of the decade and delivered on the hype the franchise had built around it for over a decade. Fans of the Thor franchise will be shocked to hear that Natalie Portman's appearance in the film was created with leftover footage from Thor: The Dark World, and she also did voiceover work for a scene when she is talking in the distance. Although Portman didn't shoot any new scenes, she attended the film's premiere. Another Easter egg in the movie was when we see 2012 Thor mention going for a bit of lunch. It's a reference to the post-credit scene from The Avengers, where the group is seen eating shawarma. Thor: Love and Thunder, 2022. Great news for all you Thor fans out there. Thor is coming back to the big screens this year, and it is going to be even bigger and better than the previous ones, but with a few interesting twists. Christian Bale playing the villainous god Gore in this movie is just the tip of the iceberg. There's more. This movie marks Natalie Portman's official return to the Marvel Cinematic Universe as Jane Foster. This was officially confirmed at the 2019 San Diego Comic-Con when Portman walked on stage and director Taika Waititi handed her a Mjolnir prop, also confirming that Jane would become the mighty Thor in this film. We cannot wait to see her take on this role. The Amazing Spider-Man, 1977. As shocking as it sounds, long before Sam Raimi's 2002 adaptation, there was a Spider-Man. Despite the fact that there was a fan film before it, the genuine title belongs to Spider-Man from 1977. There are several reasons for its oblivion. The 1977 version was a TV pilot that was turned into a film in which the iconic superhero battles with an evil self-help guru. Yep, this was definitely the 70s. Spider-Man began as a pilot that only screened in foreign theaters. It was unwillingly released on VHS later. As a result, Spidey began his career in the most unglamorous way possible. Spider-Man Strikes Back, 1978. Surprisingly, the original Spider-Man TV movie was so popular that it spawned an entire series, and even a film sequel. As a result, episodes from the television series were recut and released outside the US as Spider-Man Strikes Back a year later. In this movie, Spider-Man was shown to be more public with his exploits since the previous film, generating more newspaper headlines and attracting so much attention that a sassy reporter called Gail Hoffman decided she wanted to land the inside scoop on Spider-Man himself, and into Spider-Blue Man's tights, too.
Who's next?
Spider-Man 2002. The original Spider-Man was a gigantic cinematic undertaking that took 17 long years to come into fruition. Surprisingly, iconic director James Cameron came very close to making his own version of the movie in the 90s. Cameron wrote a 57-page script memo outlining his vision, and Stan Lee, Spidey's co-creator, gave his blessing to the filmmaking. But Carolka Studios' bankruptcy put a stop to those plans. The alterations didn't stop here. Green Goblin was also not the first option for the web-slinger's opponent. Original drafts featured Dr. Octopus as the antagonist, but screenwriter David Koepp introduced the Green Goblin when Sony began crafting its version, which director Raimi preferred. Spider-Man 2, 2004. Although Spider-Man 2 is usually regarded as one of the best superhero flicks, many fans would be startled by the bizarre elements that went into making it. In the original film, Doc Ock was going to team up with the Green Goblin to take on Spider-Man. However, because the film already had too many moving elements, Sam Raimi decided against it, and he was introduced in Spider-Man 2. Even though Tobey Maguire was set to be replaced by Jake Gyllenhaal due to Tobey's concerns over his back injury sustained during the shooting, he eventually ended up coming back. Get it? And even performed most of the stunts himself. Spider-Man 3, 2007. The final installment in Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy grossed $890.9 million worldwide, making it the highest-grossing film of the trilogy. But with a budget of $250 million, this was considered to be one of the most expensive films ever made. However, with the development of revolutionary CGI, the astronomical costs of shooting on location in New York at $1 million per day, and extensive reshoots, many industry insiders speculate a final tab of $350 million or more in production costs alone. Additionally, the visual effects needed to depict the Sandman's abilities took 3 years to build, and various sand experiments were carried out to better understand the dynamics of sand. In 2014 and was such a commercial and critical failure that Sony shut down the project entirely without even filming the third film. One of Spider-Man's most recognizable characters, the hilariously spiteful news boss J. Jonah Jameson, was never mentioned in this movie. He's mentioned several times in this sequel, but he never appears. According to the creators, they were unable to find an actor who could match J.K. Simmons' iconic portrayal of this character in Sammy Raimi's Spider-Man movie. Similar to the Sandman situation in Spider-Man 3, the VFX team studied electrical phenomena in great detail to nail Electro's look in the movie. Captain America: Civil War, 2016. Spider-Man's third iteration in the 21st century came not in the form of his own movie, but by introducing him to the Marvel Cinematic Universe through Captain America: Civil War. Sony Pictures first turned down Marvel's offer of a portion of the profits if they could bring Spider-Man over, but Sony Corporation was disappointed with the financial returns and critical reaction of the Amazing Spider-Man series and chose to renegotiate a contract. Tom Holland and Charlie Plummer were the only two candidates for the part of Spider-Man. Despite the casting choice being split, Holland was cast in the end, becoming the youngest person to portray Spider-Man at 19. Spider-Man: Homecoming, 2017.
I'm gonna die.
Tom Holland's Spider-Man finally got his own movie in 2017 with the release of Homecoming. The Amazing Spider-Man was not a success, with several critics complaining that it was too similar to previous Spider-Man films. So Marvel took a different direction by skipping over the origin story part entirely this time around. Avengers: Infinity War, 2018. Even though it wasn't a Spider-Man movie, Marvel's most ambitious crossover project converged with Infinity War, and Spider-Man was a huge part of the movie's success, even though he only had a screen time of 7.5 minutes in the movie. Because he exposed too many secrets in Spider-Man: Homecoming, Tom Holland was not allowed to see the script for this film. The movie ended up becoming the fourth movie to gross over $2 billion worldwide. and at the time of release, was the second most expensive movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the second most expensive superhero movie of all time. Avengers Endgame, 2019. The final installment of Marvel's third phase was also its longest film ever and took the world by storm, becoming the highest-grossing movie of all time, collecting more than $2.8 billion in box office sales. When it came to the idea of time travel, the writers consulted actual experts on quantum mechanics and time travel. Endgame is said to have cost between $350 to $400 million to make. This makes it one of the most costly films ever made. A sneak peek of Spider-Man Far From Home was included in the post-credits scene added for the re-release of this film, setting up the stage for what was to come next. Spider-Man Far From Home, 2019. Marvel's fourth phase started off with the next chapter of Spider-Man's life, 8 months after the events of Avengers Endgame. Mysterio was supposed to be one of the villains in Sam Raimi's canceled Spider-Man 4, but the film never saw the light of day. Throughout the film, Jake Gyllenhaal is practically never seen without his full superhero costume. It was suggested to him that he change into something else for various sequels.